Hello and welcome to my channel. I am Lindy Way, the madam of all madams, the maid of all maids. Today we are continuing from the previous episode to the topic that we were talking about. We spoke about making sure that you involve your family members, you involve everyone who's an occupant of that particular household, more domestic work, so that when you involve everybody, you also make sure that emotionally they are prepared for that process, for the fact that a stranger will be coming in to our space, right? If you had previous domestic workers before, you also want to have that conversation with the family to say, guys, are you comfortable with us hiring another domestic worker? Maybe also go back and look at the challenges that you had as a family with the previous domestic worker, whether they resigned, whether they left, whether you fired them, whatever the case may be. But it's worth having that conversation familiar how as to now we are looking at a new chapter. We are considering getting a new worker. What is it that we can do? Now, the first thing I spoke about is the job spec, and I said you together with your family and all occupants of that household, the type of domestic worker. So the first part of your job spec is the type of person I'm looking for. Age range, nationality, language, personality, personal attributes, whatever the case may be. The second part that we're going to focus on today, what type of skills do you want this particular worker to have? Now, I'm going to give a simple example. I have a friend of mine, Zelani, she's my best friend. Her house is a 14-bedroom house. She's got a pool and a jacuzzi inside and out. She's got a lapa and a cottage. It's like this beautiful, massive house. I have a 5-bedroom house. My other friend Sylvia has a 3-bedroom house. My other friend Evelyn stays in a bachelor flat. My other friend stays in Wonder Park Estate, a 1.5-bedroom house. So when you look at all of us and just the setup of our houses, we cannot be looking for the same skill set in a domestic worker. So firstly, you must look at your own household and say, okay, this is my household and this is what I would appreciate. These are people within the same household. This is what they would appreciate. So level the skill set. I want a domestic worker. Don't just be like, okay, as long as she's a woman, like I said in the previous episode, as long as she's a woman, she can cook, clean and iron. She's using muti. She's using holy water, holy ash. She wakes up at 12 and prays and screams and whatnot. Because when you said to your friend, I get it, when we look for domestic workers, go next door, chomi, referele, or go help her Lindiwe, because Lindiwe, he really Mampi for 12, 15 years. So tell Mampi to bring me her sister. And you assume that because Mampi is such a good domestic worker for Lindiwe, she's got a sister who is like her. No, guys, let's be real. There are no two people who are the same. DNA is different. Mampi has her own DNA. The sister has a different DNA. And why I'm emphasizing on this issue of you guys just going lonyaka di maid, go di koneng or go choming or go cousin or go mama is because it also puts your relationship with the person who referred that person in harm's way. If Tselane refers somebody to me because that someone is the sister to her helper, when my helper is doing funny things and she's not working and she's lazy and she's misbehaving, right? As if Tselane is an expert, she's not. Made for you is, right? So please sit with your family, draft the type of person you're looking for. Secondly, the skill set. You would say on the skill set, I need someone, of course, who can cook and clean and iron. But my main thing, personally, my main thing when I was looking for a helper was I needed someone who is also very good with babies, infants, children. My thing was that was my X factor. To say, of course, she can know how to cook, clean and iron, but I need someone who's good with babies, someone who's got the patience, yabana, anti ola man, you know what, who's got the patience. Either this helper must be someone who either raised their own children with kindness and love, or it's someone who has previously worked as a domestic nanny. Domestic nanny. And I'm also, in my next episode, I'm going to speak about the type of domestic workers that are there, because you are madam. Domestic workers domestic work. As long as me apron domestic work. Domestic worker, it's an umbrella body. There's different types of domestic workers. So, but I'll talk about that in my next episode. Today we're talking about the skill set. Skill set is se o se batlang. O batla motho a itse eng, a itse tlhapa, a itse tlhatswa, a itse aina, a itse eng. And what is your biggest thing? Wa bona eo ki deal breaker. Now for me, deal breaker was that yo mampe tshwantse hore o rata bana. Right? Hanga tla fela high. And I used to work for a bank and we used to work abnormal hours. And hanga fitla high ka kra sa cleaner. Mara bana ba ka ba le happy ba jele. I'm good. Right? Not to say that I'm condoning that kind of behavior, that she shouldn't do this. But as long as there's just a reason as to why she didn't clean, maybe the child had a fever and therefore she prioritized the child. That's how she thinks that was my helper. So your thing might be different. Let me tell you a little story. We had, I think when we started in Pretoria North, next to Wonder Park, we had a lot of requests. And from Kempton Park, strange enough, they were from Kempton Park and Vonnerboom. And we had Bomedeme looking for a domestic worker, of course, who can cook, clean, and iron. But they must know how to do laundry washing, laundry sorting, soap measuring. They must know how to use the laundry machine. They must be amazing at ironing. And we started thinking, guys, man, are checking why we're getting so many requests, only to find that the madams in those areas, most of their husbands were cabin crew, so they work for your airlines, you know, either ki pilot or ki the attendees bakamo plane. So one of the biggest thing was that their uniform must be clean. They must not even have a little nyana dot e. So as much as Andy can do this and that, but their biggest thing was to make sure laundry is done perfectly. Right? And we also had a couple of clients in Bloemfontein who were OCD, and not necessarily because of their own choosing. Some was because of medical conditions. So we had Medeme Omongo, Bloemfontein, Woodlands. Wanahai was very, very sickly. So Wanola had to, whatever that needed to be used for cleaning had to be clean products, green products, right? It couldn't be the normal chemicals, see? And the house had to be cleaned maybe twice and whatnot and whatnot. So this madam is saying, Lindiwe, I need a helper, of course, but let me tell you the condition of my own household. I've got a child who's sick, and therefore bacteria, not even as smallest, she cannot be exposed to that. So I do OCD, what's on and how to use green products. And when we're talking green products, re bolela ka go cleaner ka vinegar, ka bicarbonate, ka coke, ka spirit. And in one of the episodes, when we talk about domestic workers training, I'm going to touch a bit on that, on cleaning chemicals and things that we can use around the household and how we train our domestics in case you want to send yours for training. So at this point, I'm talking about the skill set. The skill set is something you're going to put in your job spec, and you're going to clearly say, Nakebata auntie who can do 1, 2, 3, but my biggest thing is, right? Kebata auntie who can. I had also a client, an employer called Santin. She was an executive. And she said, Lindiwe, auntie can do everything, but the biggest thing for me is to make sure that she can cook and bake, because my husband and my kids, they love home-cooked meals. They don't like takeaways and stuff like that. So auntie studied staying as an assistant chef, or who went to culinary school, or who went to any kind of hotel school, or who have done catering before. Of course she needs to clean. Of course she needs to do that. But my biggest thing is to make sure that Banabaka every day eat a home-cooked meal, and not just a simple meal, yadi mayonnaise, what, mazambane, and all those kind of salads. No, some kind of nice things. And we're able to assist. So the issue of skill set as part of your job spec is so important. So make sure you put that in, involve your family, involve your children. Don't forget that. That is the second segment of the job spec. So just to recap from the first episode, we spoke about how do I identify and hire a good domestic worker. One thing not to do, please do not go to your friend and say, Chomi Garwena, your domestic worker is so amazing and whatnot. Please tell her to refer her cousin or her sister. That is going to be detrimental towards the relationship you have with your friend or your cousin or whoever that you've asked help from, right? Are being real. We know these things, guys. So, and secondly, I want to talk about also avoiding going to Kodi Koneng. So utloya ko khone wakrabo anti ba tshodi pampiri tsa domestic, whether South Africans, whether Lesotho, whether Zimbabwean, nationality for me is not an issue. They are standing there ko khoneng, they are looking for this, they are at the gate of the estate, and therefore out of desperation you hire this person. You don't know this person. You don't know why she's standing there. She has not been background checked. For all you know, she killed 7 people in Zimbabwe. You don't know. And I'm not saying necessarily Zimbabweans. I'm not trying to be tribalist or xenophobic or anything like that. I'm just making an example, right? And we are going to speak about that on Domestic Workers Chronicles, #AboAnti. We're going to speak about different nationalities and their skill sets, their strengths, their weaknesses in the next episode. You would, you know, just subscribe and like, and we will notify you when we do an episode about that. But are we avoiding you guys? Let's be sensitive. But let's be sensitive. You are bringing someone in your own household, in your space, who is going to take care of not only cleaning the house, but your house assets and mostly your children. Children are so sensitive. So because they are cheaper, or because, well, I don't want to follow the right procedure and maybe I'll pay them below the rate. Let me tell you, yo kawata wena mbra. Yo kawata wena daideng. Hauna muthu mo kawata nyo kawata wena. So avoid that. So sit down with your family, involve everyone within the family, have a discussion first as to we are looking at hiring another domestic worker or a domestic worker for the first time. Let's draft a job spec. But before we even draft the job spec, Lona family, what say you? Are you comfortable with this? What type of domestic worker would you need? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's part of your job spec. Number 2, skill set. The skill set is 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. The third part we're going to talk about in terms of identifying and hiring a good domestic worker is the job spec itself, right? So most of you are in corporate or government or informal employment where before you applied for that position, there was an advertisement. So how you got attracted to that job is because you read that advert and you said, oh, wow, I can actually do this. Let me apply. So it's the same. When we're talking about changing the narrative within the domestic worker space and professionalizing the sector so that we allow new entrants to the sector to understand that it's a professional type of work. These are things that we need to do. The responsibility starts with us, right? Government can put so many laws and things, but Rona, when we don't take responsibility and play our role, that's where we mess it up. So for many years, the domestic worker sector has been one of the sectors that has been marginalized. There's lots of exploitation. And when I talk about marginalization and exploitation, I'm not only talking on the part of the domestic worker being exploited and all that. I'm talking equally the employers that has been exploited, the domestic workers that has been exploited, that has been underpaid, that were stolen from, kids that were beaten and abused, right? So when we're talking about Made for You as an organization, we are fighting to make sure that this space is professional. But whilst we're doing that, we need everybody to come to the party, right? So it starts with you, Medeme, le familiar, how to draft that spec. Talk about the type of person you need. I'm emphasizing on that. Secondly, talk about the skill sets that you want. The third thing is what we call the job spec itself, where I'm saying when you yourself applied for the job that you saw an advert and the advert was quite clear and thorough as to we are looking for a marketing manager who is going to be managing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, a team of 30 people. She'll be responsible for 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. She must be computer literate. She must be a leader. She must be. So that's job spec. The spec itself. So when you do a domestic worker spec, you talk about, okay, if we were to advertise this, what are we going to say? Hi, we are a family of 20 or a family of 3, a family of 4. We have 4 dogs or 5 pets. And guys, it's important to talk about the number of people, the occupants in that household. If you have tenants outside, also specify that because they also play a role in terms of making a mess for this auntie to clean. And what also becomes important that we need to specify is if you have any pets, please be open about it. You have 2 dogs, say the pit bull, Jack Russell, you've got snakes, you've got what? We don't want this poor person to now be attracted to a job under false pretense. So we talk about the job spec itself. So if you were to advertise it, you need to say, this is a family of how many people, this is how many rooms, this is outside rooms, this is what we have, this is what we desire, right? The job spec, especially the third part where we're talking about the job spec, if you were to advertise it, how will you phrase it? Phrase it like that, because that in itself is going to talk to the work schedule. And I am going to talk about the work schedule and how to compile that in a simple way for domestic workers. Thank you for joining me again on this wonderful channel, the Domestic Workers Chronicles, Abo Andi, where we talk everything. Abo Andi, the good, the bad, the ugly, the gory stories. If you have any stories to share, you want us to talk to you, you have any challenge, we are here. We will definitely assist you. Thank you so much. Click, like, subscribe.